Yo, what's up?
Okay, so I'm in the middle of a horrendous workplace investigation. So I took part of the day today off and went and saw Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard. So I own, I am a major Samuel L. Jackson fan. So I wore my choose your own motherfucker t-shirt. So when I lean back and you see the word motherfucker, just ignore it. Okay. Like, don't be offended.
Oh, no. No, lean back
See?
now. Lean back now.
See?
Okay, you send me one of those. I'm going to send you one of these.
Oh, I love it. Love it.
Casey Pride.
Ooh, I love it.
I love yours. Oh my God. So I'm catching your energy at the right time.
Okay, good. So yes, I'm a huge Samuel L. Jackson fan, and so I rarely miss a movie of his. So
what's his latest?
First movie in 15 months. Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard.
Well, okay, that's the one you went and just saw.
Yeah. So Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard came out in 2017. I will go to my grave saying that was the best movie of 2017. This one was my first movie in 15 months, and I'm a huge moviegoer. So it was a big deal. So it was great. It's not a great movie by any stretch of the imagination, but there was enough explosions and hilarity that I enjoyed it immensely. So.
Oh, good. I'm so glad. Where did you get the shirt?
There's a company in London. So I also follow Samuel Jackson on Instagram.
Okay.
And he wears shirts with his face on them. And I saw this one. And my kids are big gamers. So I'm like, they will think this is funny because it's like a choose your fighter situation. So I went and got this one. So,
well, you know what's interesting? Samuel L. Jackson, I think it was my production manager, Nico, who was telling me about that line, motherfucker, his cussing, was how it helped him with his speech impediment.
Oh, I believe that. Yep, I believe that.
And so the cursing allowed it to basically get better. Mm-hmm. I mean, I imagine all that anxiety of people trying to, is like, why can't you talk right? It was like, leave me alone, motherfucker. Like,
and then it came out right?
It just came out like, you did it.
Yes. So, like there are studies that people who swear are more mentally well, more adjusted, more resilient, and more emotionally intelligent because they use it in a way that is that tension releaser. It is when I do respectful workplace training, I talk about I love the F word. It's on my keychain. It's, I love it. But there's a difference between fuck me and fuck me.
Right.
Like,
right.
That's the difference you have to know about. I'm not going to say you can't swear at work. I would never be in your workplace if that was the case. But there's the difference between the connotation of those two ways that makes it important. So, yeah.
It's a good, we could do it now. Just a nice deep breath in. Let it out. Fuck.
Yep. Yes.
Feel how releasing that is.
Right. Yeah. I apologize to your production assistant.
Right. So I was telling Amy Leslie, she was one of my guests and my colleague, is talking about having your morning constitution, important. And I said, if some of these leaders and executives would just have a regular constitution in the morning, we would have a lot less stress in our people management. I say the same thing regarding this. Like if anybody would just breathe in like, fuck, there'd probably be a lot less stress in the workday.
Yes, absolutely. So the one other thing I do to release stress is whenever a friend of mine is getting divorced, I go to Goodwill and I buy $20 worth of cheap dishes. And then we smash it in a driveway, like just smash some dishes because I know you're angry. Let's get it out. And it's like so releasing. So I know ways to channel anger. I'm very good at it. So
good. I'm learning. I'm getting back into running. I I was scared too because of being diagnosed with a heart condition. I had to get a pacemaker a few years ago, and I'd always been a distance runner, but I wasn't communicating right to my cardiologist, and I don't think I was listening to my body correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And I was stressing about the running, and I finally here a couple of months ago, I was like, I'm going to get back into running. And I found it was so relieving of my anger and bitterness. I'm like, oh my gosh, I've missed this. And when I went back to my cardiologist, he was just like, I don't know why you stopped. And I was like, I don't know. I think maybe I was afraid my heart was going to explode or something. I don't know.
Yes.
But it scared me. But oh my gosh, we need those releases.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I feel bad for people who need dishes from Goodwill, but it went to a good purpose.
I'm gonna come break bitches. I'm gonna come break bitches with you someday. No, I'm gonna come break dishes with you someday.
Yes.
We could do the other one too if that's what what we need to do.
Right. If that's what it takes.
That's what it takes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I am so glad you're here with me today. I can't wait to talk and dive into some things, into just the motherfucking things that keep us up at night, and to dive deep into the HR, human resources, realness stuff that just people are afraid to dive into. You dive into it, and you dive into it where you are credentialed.
Yes.
You're like, you're credentialed in the sense like you're the instructor in an open ocean deep dive. Like you're fully credentialed, you are licensed, you are endorsed, and you're going to take us deeper into an understanding of where the hell HR is going.
Okay.
And I want to give you some little housekeeping tips here.
Okay.
We'll just I'm using the power of my listening skills and the science of that with my friend Dr. Laura Jenisic. So I'll settle in, and I want to listen more and just have a couple of questions that I'll ask, but mostly surrounding just HR, where it's going. Especially after this last year, this huge pivot, and any denial of that pivot is just foolishness.
Absolutely.
So not your resume, give me your passion, your purpose, and then a little bit of your resume.
Okay.
I'm breaking the resume stigma.
Okay. I have a very squiggly line, so it's hard to get there. Okay. I think I could do it.
All right. So go. Just really brief. Passion, your purpose, and then just a little bit of your resume, and then we'll get into the meat of everything.
Okay. Sounds good.
So go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Oh, okay. So, well, my name is Kate. I suffer from law degree. I'm also an HR person. So I got my street cred working for the U.S. Department of State. And so my passion is, how do we make people feel like they belong in the workplace, and that their opinion about how we do things, what the culture is, matters. And so whether I'm doing training or policy work or an investigation, that is what I'm trying to figure out is this place the right place for this person? Not in I'm looking to fire them, but how can I shift and mold and kind of train people to make it so everyone feels like they should be there and that they want to be there to contribute for the organization.
That's a hard thing to navigate. That's not easy.
My friends all tell me I have the worst job in the world. I think I have the best one. So it might not seem easy, but I absolutely adore it. So
yeah, it's all in how you look at it. How did you first get into, because you've said something, and you're about, and I wanted to stalk you a little bit, and you say some very powerful things. And when I read your about, and when you say, I love HR, I feel you love it.
Oh, for
Because you're
sure.
you're for the justice, the compassion of it, the compromise in it.
Mm-hmm.
You're about what it is, the essence of it. And you, it's like, wow, when she's not one of these, you know, um, emerging professionals or somebody on a panel giving the whole talk like, why did you go into HR? I love people. No,
No.
it's like there's a difference. It's like but you love HR.
I do. I really love HR. I
Mm-hmm.
know that we have the stigma that I live alone, have 2 cats, lots of Coach bags, and I like to fire people. Like that's the stigma of what we do, right? But that's not how I see it.
Right.
And in fact, I liken HR to more of the work of the CIA. Now, I normally get the question like, "Oh, you work for the Department of State. Are you a spy?" No, I'm not a spy. Never was a spy. But what the CIA does is when they have a really good day, nobody hears about it. When they have a really bad day, everybody hears about it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the same thing for HR. If we have a really good day, Susie's maternity leave went on without a hitch. The fight that happened between Jamal and Jose resolved easily.
Mm-hmm.
Like when we have a good day, when we make a difference in the workplace, you shouldn't see us. You shouldn't feel our presence around it. You should know that we took care of it and people feel better about it and we can move on as an organization. That's what I think HR is that we are kind of the quote unquote resource for both employees to come to us to get help when they need it, or to get just advice of how to handle a weird manager situation or a weird coworker situation. And then we are that voice of management to say, hey guys, you can't do it this way, or maybe we should try it this other way, or this is the dictate. Sorry, this is what it is. And you should know and trust, because I've built a relationship with you, that this is what it's going to be. And I'm sorry if you don't like it, but this is how it's going to be. And I'll help you figure out a way to navigate those waters. So,
yeah. You touch a lot on the fact of, the CIA, we don't hear about it. We don't hear about how they're protecting us. We don't hear about how they're doing the things because it's done in secret, right? Almost. And that's sometimes like, and in HR, it almost seems like what's the big secret of HR? And it feels you touch base on it, you feel very alone. It's a very lonely profession, which is, I always encourage my colleagues and my peers, like, be sure you have a peer group.
For sure. Absolutely.
The fatigue is just heart-wrenching in this work. So you talk about that loneliness and what it feels like in that. Can you touch a little bit about how that resonated with you, how you felt in some of your experiences?
So I'll give you an example. This is not classified in any way, shape, or form, but when I was at Consulate General Jerusalem, our guard posts have both an Israeli Hebrew speaker and a Palestinian Arabic speaker, because both of those groups have groups in it that hate America. So at every guard post, you'll have 2 of them. And the consulate person who's head of security wanted to arm the guards, but the Israeli Foreign Ministry was only going to allow us to arm the Israelis, not arm the Palestinians. And I was really angry about that, because I had regular employee relations issues between these 2 people at the guard posts regularly. I had Stars of David, I had Nazi symbols, I had all of those things. And so I was regularly dealing with the employee relations part of that. And then he wanted to add a gun to it. I was like, don't be dumb. Like, this didn't make sense to me. And so as a human resources professional, I can't be out there publicly saying you can't have a gun here. Like, I can't employees can't see me doing that, but I have to advocate on their behalf internally. I have to go up my chain, or in this case, go to Washington and try to get as many people to see what I saw as a big problem. And so part of my job in human resources was to isolate myself from the people that I serve, quote unquote, serve, but also go toe to toe with the head of security, to go toe to toe with people in Washington who thought this was important. And so that is isolating advocacy work, but that's the role of HR, is to protect these people that I serve, but also to advocate up on their behalf. So it can be really isolating. It can be really frustrating sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But when you succeed and you know it's the right thing to do, then hopefully it works out that way. And in this case, shortly after my departure from Post, I had been in big brouhaha about it. Shortly after my departure from Post, the head of security left, and the new one was like, she was right, man. We can't have a gun here. So it went away. So, even if I just delayed the policy for a bit, it still resolved it in a way that kept my employees safe. That's how I looked at it.
Wow. And well, what's interesting is you're constantly the bearer of bad news.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like.
Yeah.
But it shouldn't have to be that way.
No.
And I get that, and I know this could be sometimes it gets the idealism of HR, but in those moments, what are the best ways or what did you get out of it? What did you learn out of it, the whole situation?
Well, I learned more about how to effectively advocate for my folks. Like I had tried a bunch of different ways to get attention to this. And also, how to persuade individuals. Like, I'm pretty perceptive as to figure out who has the unofficial authority in an organization. Sometimes it's the executive assistant to the CEO has all of the power. And, if you want the CEO's attention, you have to go through his EA. And it gets really easy to, try to figure out how to navigate that relationship, because if you have a good one, things will be going smooth. If you don't, so I'm pretty perceptive of figuring out who has that unofficial kind of authority within the organization. And that the situation I mentioned at ConGen was, who has that authority, kind of figuring that out. So even when I'm doing an investigation and I'm trying to figure out if harassment occurred or what led to this allegation happening, even if the actual harassment isn't what happened, like there's still something going on that led to someone thinking that this allegation was appropriate. So I'm looking for who are the bastions of power that don't have the title, who can influence the next steps for good or bad. If this person, doesn't respect process, doesn't respect authority, and is, stirring the pot all the time, I can identify that person and say, this person is not great for your organization. They're just creating more mess. Or if this person is a really solid manager, but constantly gets dumped on, I can go then say, my recommendations are, you recognize how great of a manager this person is, and you reward that. So that was something I learned from that situation, is to figure out who those people are and get them into your sphere of influence so that you know how to navigate difficult advocacy waters. And I don't think that's a skill that everyone has, but I think it's something you can develop from perception.
No, it certainly isn't. And I think that's the one thing, and it has a lot of critical thinking in there because it's so strategic. Now, it's sad, that we have to be that strategic, but I often worry that in human resources, the way that I have seen it become is this more of the lack of the critical thinking that it takes to go into those strategies. I think they think too HR-y and not strategically. It becomes a little too what is proper and what is by the book. And it's not, working with human is not, there is no by the book a lot of times.
Most definitely not. And I don't have the book. I've seen the book. I don't like the book. I don't refer to the book. I look at what is the normal human response to this situation? What would likely be this person's response if I put him in this scenario? Would they be able to succeed? In part, have they been beat down so much they don't have the confidence to necessarily succeed here? Or is it that they've been undermined? Like I look at the perspective of how is someone going to be a productive, valued, respected person, and then try to figure out how we can maneuver the situation so that they feel vindicated by that in many ways. And that's HR. Like HR is most of the time, and while I hate this phrase, most of the time are the right people in the right seats? Are we getting recognition to the right people who deserve it? Or do we only glorify the favorites of an organization? So I think from a fundamental level, we're getting the right people in the right roles, and we're making sure that they're recognized when they do well.
And we are finding that is certainly difficult with what we're seeing as the terms that are popping up: labor exodus, the mass resignation.
The great resignation.
Yeah, it wasn't the great migration. They were trying to make a spoof on it. It's like the great resignation. I'm like, oh my. No, it's happening. We're in the midst. Sure. People cannot find people. And just like what you just mentioned with all the characteristics that go into what we're trying to see with somebody, like, were they beat down? Were we not nurturing their talent in the right way? Those things. But now, did we get swallowed up by that tide? Because now, with the way the workforce is, in this mass resignation, how do we navigate it from here? There's a trust that has been broken that I'm starting to see with the data in regard to what Department of Labor is showing with the decrease of unemployment, but also nobody's going back to work. We got 8 million people. They're not who aren't claiming, but they're not going back to work. So it's like, we got a mass resignation of females who are going back to the home to take care of the kids because they found out they could do the same with doing less work as far as working double. And so we see all these things that are happening, and I can't help but think that it goes back to what you said. Is like, have they been beat down? What is happening? And you getting into the critical thinking as to what and where HR is going.
Oh, well, thank you. I would say that it's not, first of all, I don't believe there's a labor shortage. Okay. So I just want to put that out there. I don't believe there's a quote unquote labor shortage. I think there's maybe,
Can we please say it again? I'll say it together with you. Ready? Yeah. 1, 2, 3. There is no labor shortage. There is no labor shortage.
No, I think what's happened, in my opinion, and I think there's some research out there that supports it, is that we're just doing a big reevaluation of the importance of work in our lives and the importance of a particular role in our lives. And do we want to keep doing that? The one thing that happened early on in the pandemic, I think, was a massive shift in how we manage people from a command and control, butts and seats mode to, oh my gosh, they're going to have to work from home, or, oh my gosh, we're going to have to change the manufacturing floor. We're going to have to change the retail floor. We're going to have to go more to online sales rather than, like, all of those things. And that great management shift, and I don't mean great and good, I mean like just a massive shift in how we manage people, resulted in a stunning realization from all kinds of employees of, is this really what I want to be doing? And for some, in large part women, do I really want to be in a Zoom call while my eight-year-old is learning math? No. Do I really want to be, out where I could get really sick and I have a sick parent at home? No. And I think there's a lot of that reprioritization and that realization, and my favorite term, navel gazing, as is this really what I want to be doing? And I think that's where we are. Those employers who, one, don't pay well to make it worth it for employees, who are saying everyone must come back to the office.
Yeah, they'll be the first to fold. That just
they'll have long-term repercussions for those kinds of decisions.
Right.
And
still
those
paying
employers,
10 an hour. No. No flexibility. Okay. Yeah.
Yep. No, you're out of here at that point in time. And I think that they're going to really suffer. They might pretend or feel a labor shortage, but it's because how they treated their people.
Right.
And the idea that I was supposed to have a grand self reimagining of improvement to my resume so that you can now use those skills, I don't think that happened. No. I think what happened was a reprioritization of what I, as the employee, want out of my job.
Right. So. And it's becoming difficult because employers are scrambling. They are scrambling. And I was worried because you and I touched base this last fall, and I just connected because I was just like, oh my God, she's an advocate, and I always love the shit you put out on LinkedIn. It's HR disruptive, but in the sense that it's not. It doesn't lose the value of anything. It's not shouting. It's not screaming. It is actual texture to what we should be focusing on and where HR is going. So you're a trend. You're to me you're the trendsetter and also the forecaster. So I'm like follow Kate.
Yeah. Sometimes my texture is more sandpaper than it is bunny foot,
well,
but yeah.
Sandpaper is meant to be what smooths it out.
Right. Theoretically, yes.
It's got a purpose. And I want to dig into this. So, you and I feel a connection in regard to, I'll just say the Society of HR Management, SHRM, and they are the largest HR system, resource center for human resources professionals. I've been involved with it for years. I have a certification through there. You have certification. I'm a provider for research. And so it's a great resource platform. It's one of the only ones as well. It's great. I mean, even down to even just the structures of things. But there was a little bit of a sting and a hurt, this last year because of, when everything happened with George Floyd, when we saw, the June 15th, what happened with June 2020, whenever the Supreme Court case,
it was 1 year ago yesterday.
Yes, 1 year ago yesterday.
Bostock decision.
What was it?
The Bostock decision.
Yes. Okay, so those all happening, and still even worried that we could still be fired for being gay. And wanting to have this conversation. And so we, that is something, and what you put out is, SHRM must support Black Lives Matter and the LGBTQ community.
Yep.
And I've really been on this track lately because I have been seeing so much about when diversity and inclusion in HR. I've had friends and colleagues that have even said HR should not even be part of diversity and inclusion. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. I think it should be part of it. I think it should be woven into every aspect of the culture of an organization. And so in this work and trying to create these cultures of belonging, it does make it difficult.
Yes. Oh, for sure.
When the organization that you get all your resources from, in organizations that you get your resources, those things from, it's like, where do they stand on belonging for all? because
Yes.
you can't nitpick where the inclusion matters. And
Yes.
when you put this out, I was like, she's understanding and get it. So thank you for putting that out. And I wanted to hear more about how this came about.
So I live in Minneapolis. So we've had a remarkably difficult year. Mm-hmm. The murder of George Floyd really setting a whole bunch of things in motion. And really a focus, like I would say for the most of the month of June, COVID didn't exist for my clients, didn't exist really for me. Not that we weren't taking precautions, like I still didn't go anywhere, but that was no longer top of mind. It was, we saw something that was horrendous. We want to figure out how we're going to fix it. And we're going to look at ourselves and see where have we contributed to it. So for most of the month of June, that's where my clients were, is a rededication, a refocus on diversity, inclusion, belonging, equity, etc. All of those things was really their focus. And as I was talking to my HR colleagues here, and that quickly spread throughout the country. Like, I don't want to say it only happened here in Minneapolis. No, it quickly spread across the country and across the world in many respects. As we're looking for that, I was looking to the organization that I often sent people to as, a baseline place to start for your policies, a baseline place for you to start for, procedures and approaches to things. And I just didn't see SHRM stepping up to recognize that this was important. And so that really bothered me. Like to my core bothered me. Yeah. And when the Bostock and its sister cases were being argued in front of the Supreme Court, there was an opportunity for SHRM to step in and file what's called an amicus brief and argue on behalf of the LGBTQ plus community and say, we want this to be included in Title VII. And in, I believe it was like 2015 or 2014, a while back, SHRM had said, we want the LGBTQ community to be recognized. We are advocating for them. But all of a sudden in 2019, silence, like that was gone. And I was frustrated with that because I wanted, the human in human resources looks at people and says, every one of you is valuable. And I don't want to fire you just because you're gay. I don't want to fire you just because you're trans. I see the value that you bring to this organization and I want to value that, right? I think if you, as my friend Christina Minyard says, you can't be in human resources if you don't believe in human rights. Like, that's just how it is. And I firmly believe, I think she's absolutely, 100% right.
Absolutely. It's a basic human right. Employment is a basic human right.
Yes, absolutely. So I looked at the silence from SHRM on Black Lives Matter, the LGBTQ plus community, and not seeing any statement in support. And it's not like SHRM doesn't file amicus briefs. They file amicus briefs all the time. In fact, they filed an amicus brief that said, HR should be able to use someone's salary history in determining what their salary should be at this company, which again, I think it's a horrible position to take because we know that leads to the gender wage gap and the race wage gap. So we shouldn't take that position. But so SHRM was stepping outside of where my values were. And I became increasingly frustrated. I have been a huge SHRM supporter. I have tweeted a whole bunch for them at their conferences. I have been resources for their journalists. I've done a whole bunch of stuff for them. And for them to be so far outside my values was really frustrating. Right. So I started this petition. I didn't think it was going to get as big as it did, nor did I think I was going to get the wrath of the board of directors at the SHRM that I did. But that's okay. It's what happens. And I know over 8,000 people have signed the petition. It's been a year since the petition started. But I think that was really the first time a lot of people were looking critically at SHRM and going, yeah, why haven't they said that? Why haven't they done that? Like, that doesn't seem to align to our values.
No.
So.
No. And they certainly don't align to mine. And my understanding was always in leadership 101, you don't grow without discomfort.
Right.
You got to have to get through the discomfort. So why do you think these things are so difficult for them to support, for them to, and I think their idea of support is definitely different than mine. I think support involves action. But in what way do you think that they could have offered some support? And if so, why don't they? Where's the bias? Where is this coming from?
You're not going to like my answer.
No, I think it needs to be heard.
My answer is money.
Right.
I sincerely believe that it's a money issue.
Follow the money.
Follow the money.
Follow the money.
SHRM has gotten a lot of money from some very conservative organizations, and they want to keep those people happy. And the current leader of SHRM, I strongly believe that he wants to run for office someday and wants to be able to have the backing of those big money people. And so he's not willing to step outside the bounds to disrupt his potential fundraising in the future. And, SHRM,
it's a great political move. The leader of the Society of Human Resource Management Global. It is the largest. It's the largest.
Yeah. That Coke money floats really well. So, I think that is the primary motivation. Now, in response to the petition, it got thousands of people to sign it. It wasn't that we're going to actually say Black Lives Matter, because they still haven't in my review and like my watching what they've been doing. They haven't done that, but they, created a blue ribbon commission that met once, that never reported out, will likely never meet again, but it was just kicking the can down the road, saying, this condescending pat on the head to this little lady in Minnesota. That's what it felt like. It's like, we're just going to kick the can. We'll satisfy some of the critics by look at what we're doing, but no one will ever care. Our attention span will go away. So there's some of those things I think happened in response, and inviting George Floyd's family to speak at their diversity, inclusion, and equity conference. Again, it's like, I think those are performative. I don't think those are things that are really ingrained. And then how they treated their employees through the pandemic, demanding that they be in the office. No one who works at SHRM needs to be in an office. No one. They can all be at home. And so it's those kinds of things that really frustrated me and created a clean break, and also created discomfort with some of my friends. Some of my friends in the HR world, where if I can't trust you to stand up for the same things that I thought we both value, then I don't think I can trust you.
It's difficult to, as a colleague at that point, because a value has the shift of the values. It's almost like I'm not one of those people that's, fake it till you make it. I'm like, I was like, well, I can do that to a certain level, but when it comes to clear, unethical actions, that's where I have to draw the line.
Right. And I think, I think there's been different, I'm advocating from inside, or I can make this change, or I can still use their resources because they're important. But there are so many other places out there where I don't need to spend my money to get me to where I can have the same kinds of valuable resources without needing to associate with an organization that just doesn't fit me anymore. And I will say, I am more than happy to speak with local SHRM groups, to statewide SHRM groups, because I think they're boots on the ground, much closer to the actual work. And I think to a large extent, they don't know or really care where national is. And when you talk to them individually, like I spoke at a local SHRM group last week, and I mentioned this amicus brief arguing that prior salary history should be used. And everyone in the room was like, what? Like, No. And so I was like, see, you're not even close to your members anymore. And so the closer I get to members, the more valuable I think I am to them, as well as, I still see my values there.
Right.
I still see that recognition there. And so I don't want to lose that connection.
No,
I just think it's
those
national.
And I think those are wonderful connections because they see the value. Those individuals I love in those local chapters. It's not because they stay disconnected. I don't feel from the SHRM, but they really are supportive of one another. Those members at large, call out to the members at large, because there are a great number of the members at large who don't come to all the meetings and the monthly meetings and things like that. And so, hopefully they can hear these things just to understand and know there is a great wealth of resources and knowledge out there. And you don't have to feel alone. You don't have to feel scared. Google, reach out to Kate, reach out to those individuals that have those resources. So, when I talked to you a little bit, there was a speaker that SHRM had promoted who had also, he had been a speaker in regard to civil, was it in the case last year, wanted to include language LGBT, sexual orientation, gender identity in the language for a law going through, I believe it was Utah.
Okay.
For anti-discrimination in employment. And this individual leads a national organization when it comes to civility in the workplace, and going to talk about civility. And it seems like this seems to be a common denominator that always comes back. And from an HR colleague, from a legal individual, and for somebody that works in the belonging space, I feel like there are times I'm trapped in this alone state, feeling like, I know y'all see this, right? You see this, right? Like, am I the only one that sees this? And so in this law, what he did not want to include the language of LGBT, sexual orientation, gender identity, until there was a compromise that the LGBT group could meet with the religious freedom liberty group and come to a compromise first.
How do you compromise on who you are?
Well, then he would put his stamp of approval on with his vote to include sexual orientation, gender identity. Now, I know and you know that there's an indoctrinated fundamental religious bias in that decision. That is a conscious decision based on a very dangerous bias. And I often tell people, when you say spot out, I can spot out this or that and that individual when I feel, and I do my best not to go to do more post-trauma care. I'm like, am I really hearing this? But I will hear things where that religious or that fundamental religious bias creeps into the workplace, such as this, where I then ask and try to explain to people, LGBT is a moral dilemma for a sad portion of our leaders in organizations.
Yes. How
do we have that conversation with HR in the bias space? It's always going to be this fight. And that's what I was trying to explain with SHRM at the time with this individual. Like, listen, your action voted against us still. We're still a moral dilemma. And until we can break through that moral dilemma of how you see us, where is our space for full inclusion?
Well, that I'm on your side here, right? Like,
but that's shit that nobody wants to talk about.
Right. Well, let me say back.
Yeah.
Prior to 1964, I could say it was against my religion to work next to a Black person. And we did away with that in 1964.
Yeah.
With Title VII. We got rid of that at that point in time. this is just the same argument, a little bit more sophisticated, a little bit more because they practiced it for a while, to say, because of who you love, I'm going to value you less in our organization, or I don't want to see you in our organization. Now, I celebrated the Boss Doc decision so much that I had to come out as straight to some of my friends, because I was so excited that this was going to be a protection from coast to coast, because it was one where when I
celebrated so bad they thought you were gay.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I had the flags out. I made the cake. Like I made a rainbow cake. Like I was all in. Like I'm like, woo!
You're adorable. I'm coming up.
Yes. I celebrated that really hard.
Okay.
So I had to come out as straight because some of my friends were like, what? And I'm like, no. Still straight. Just so happy that this decision. And Minnesota has had gender identity and sexual orientation protections for a while, much longer than the federal government has. But I would go to a state where that protection didn't exist and have to take it off of my slide. I was like, that's just seems wrong. Like Patrick and Max are getting flirty and they commenting on each other's bums. Like that should still be an example as to whether or not that's harassment, regardless of whether I'm in Minnesota or if I am in North or South Dakota. Like that shouldn't matter. And so I was so excited about the decision because it made my friends feel seen. It made them feel valued. And I wanted to value them that way because I didn't want to lose that example. And that seems like I only cared about it for my training. I don't. But it was like, why do I have to take this off? Because this state doesn't protect it. So like I wanted that protection to exist. And I think the religion piece of it makes it so your religion is more important than who I love. And that is a problem because if we go to the fundamentals of every religion, it is, love thy neighbor as a universal truth. So why is your religion more important than that? And so, some things that the EEOC just came out with new guidance on sexual orientation and gender identity, SOGI, something I had never heard of before. Like I think it's
SOGI. I think they got it from the Soji unicorn, the YouTube thing, the Soji unicorn. I'll send it to you. It's a little Soji unicorn, the gender unicorn.
Okay, well that's awesome. That the EEOC is now indoctrinating that.
They're doing Soji. Nice. Okay.
They're doing Soji. So they have this new guidance on sexual orientation, gender identity. And one of the pieces of guidance is if you're an employer and you have men's and women's bathrooms, locker rooms, facilities, a trans person gets to use whatever bathroom aligns with their identity. Okay. And for me, it's like, why do you care where people pee? Like, as long as they're peeing in a pee receptacle, let them pee. Like, yeah. I don't care.
What's the stigma?
Exactly. Like,
yeah.
Woo!
Yeah.
Now, I've peed in more than one men's bathroom, and I don't identify as a man in any way, shape, or form. But I have gone to the men's bathroom because the line is shorter. And, I go in like this. I don't want to see your weenies. I just need to pee.
Just need to pee. I'm only here to pee. Well, in Europe, they don't give a shit. I mean, they're just they're individual stalls.
And the doors go all the way to the floor.
Yeah, you do your business. And I'm like, I think it's just America is just, I don't know. We have a very demented mindset about the body. But anyway, go ahead, bathroom.
Yeah, so that's part of the guidance. Well, that is just don't be dumb. Don't pry where you don't need to pry. Like, for example, if someone came and started working for me and they were trans, I don't think I would notice. Like in many cases, I don't think I would be that perceptive to be able to pick up on that. And why would I care? I would hope that they bring their life experiences to the workplace, and so that they can help me make better decisions, so that they can help for the variety of reasons of why we love having diversity, inclusion, equity, and belonging in the first place, because we want all those valuable life experiences in our workplace.
Yeah.
But I don't care what you do with your personal life.
But here's what happens. the HR makes a big deal about it, or the hiring manager makes a big deal about it. It's like, what paperwork? What legal name? What do we do? It's like they go freaking nuts and just lose all sense of education, working with people at all. If it's like, well, is it their legal name, or is it going to get us in legal trouble? And they won't go through a program, or they won't implement a diversity and inclusion programming or onboarding or anything because they simply don't know how to do it.
And that's where we have to learn how to be flexible.
Yeah.
Like, I argue for HR to, one, have a titanium spine so they can stand up to management.
Oh,
when
that's
they
good.
hear that stupid thing about what the hiring manager is saying, well, what I do, I don't know. You need a titanium spine and say, you don't care, dude. Relax. It's going to be fine. Like, as long as we treat each other with respect, this will be fine. Mm-hmm. But that titanium spine also has to be flexible enough to go, my name is Kate, and that's on my driver's license, but I would like you to call me Samuela. Okay? BFD. Like, it's done. A big fucking deal. Like,
done.
Easy peasy, right? Right? You know, it's just the pay stub says Kate, the name tag and the door sign says Samuela, right? Like, it's just, we make a big, quote unquote, big deal out of it when it really is nothing to be mad about, nothing to get frustrated about. But because so many people, unfortunately, like me, lawyers, have said everything needs to be cut and dried, everything is black and white, blah, 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 and extending that, it makes HR people feel uncomfortable in that gray. And we just got to get comfortable there. It doesn't matter on the big scale of things. It doesn't matter. You know, if you are a winery or you're a movie production business, this is not the end of the world, right? The only place that might be closer to the end of the world is when you're the doctor who's taking care of that person. Then it's much significantly more important. But your employer, doesn't matter. So I don't mean to minimize people. Minimize people's experience,
but it's interesting because you know, I was at a conference and a lady, the speaker, she was from the UK, and she. Not disrupt HR, disruptive HR. I think there's several different variations out there, but basically, it's essentially what you talked about. This was a human resources executive who essentially was like, "Be a fucking adult."
Yeah.
How about we start there first? You know, in all of this last year's chaos, it got to a point, and and some of these people, whenever they were coming to me. They had children. I'm like, how are you even raising children? Like, at some point, like, be an adult. Be an adult. Well, make a kind, honest decision. And these were individuals that even had their certifications, and I was just dumbfounded by they could not make that pivot last year. It's like just got so scared of everything, and I just say it because it's like they lost the book and how to be an adult.
Yeah. Well, so it's funny you mentioned that because I teach an HR compliance program at my law school for HR professionals. It's done through distance. It's asynchronous. And the first example, like, it's a big story of this company, and you have to find all of the issues that are in the company and then rank them 1 to 3. Like, what are you going to do? And the company has a kegerator. And so every Thursday at 4:00, everybody gets around, has a beer, and talks about, what's going on in the organization. Like, half the time, the HR people are like, you got to get rid of that kegerator because, that's going to be a problem. And my response to that is, that was the biggest red herring for you. Because imagine being the first HR person that goes into that organization and gets rid of the thing that creates social relationships within the organization, that allows them to relax together, to be a team. And if that's the first thing you're going to go in and get rid of, you're a bad HR person. You don't see the people part of it. And you hired adults. If somebody gets too drunk, you call them an Uber or a Lyft or a
Right.
taxi or give them a ride home. And then you say, dude, you can't do that anymore. Like, this is a disciplinary thing at that point in time. You can't do that anymore. Like,
Yeah.
BFD, you don't get rid of the thing that has ingrained itself in how
Right.
they do business. And for a human resources professional, the same is true for when you're dealing with people who don't look like you.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have to think the way you do.
Right.
You have to come from a place of respect. And that
Mhm.
means flexibility around how we operate and how we work together. So,
Yeah, that neurodiversity is, I think people are tapping a little more into that here lately. And
God
seeing
willing.
how, yeah, I'm hoping, because I mean, I'm hearing more about it. I'm listening to a lot more about it on with professors and other HR professionals. I'm hearing more about it, and it's really good to see that people are settling into neurodiversity, because that right there, that's such a it's one of the biggest conflicts that even I've had with people and myself, is because I will not, I have failed too often to not to put the other person's perspective, and I'm like, well, my way is the right way, so it's had to really help me with my ego. What would,
Well,
oh,
and
sorry.
it goes back to that point of, you know, being willing to see people where they are and respect them for that. So,
Why is that such a scary thing for a human resources professional to do in the workplace, where it's like, see people for who they are, where they are? That means even in their struggles, if they're bringing them to work. It's almost as if, and I heard so often somebody might say, well, leave your personal life at home and bring your work life to work. And it's just like, but now we're confused in this whole thing: work life balance, work life integration. At what point does it become too personal? What's the spectrum, HR people? And at what point can you not, can you have to be able to say, I can't worry about it all? You know, where are the right balances, would you say, for our colleagues
Shane Bradley,
listening?
you are in my living room right now.
I know.
Like, we have been in each other's living room, in our bedrooms, in our kitchens, in our garages, I did an interview with someone who was in their closet, like literally in the closet, like not the metaphorical closet, but the literal closet. Like, the line is it is either a dotted line by choice of the employee, or it's non-existent. And for employers, the best advice I give them, not saying it's the best advice, that it's my advice that is so great, but the thing I want them to know is that you get to draw a line of what is respectful behavior. And whatever comes into your line, you get to say, this is what is respect. My hope for you is that line includes people with different hair textures. It includes people who are punk rockers who might have black eyeliner on in messy ways. But you don't have to accept the nudist in your office.
Right.
The punk rocker who's bringing their amp to the office. No, you don't have to accept that either. But you have to have a line that says, this is what our definition of respect is. Right. It may be the golden rule. It may be the platinum rule of treat others how they want to be treated. But it has to be something where you say, we want you to be here. We care about you. If your mom is sick, tell me, because I have tools that I can help you with if your mom is sick. If you are wanting to have a baby and you're, suffering from infertility issues, if you want to tell me, I want to hear about it, because there might be things I could help you with. And making it okay for people to tell you about their life situations means that you have an opportunity to address them. We have EAPs for a reason. We have health insurance for a reason. We offer PTO and FMLA and all of those other quote unquote benefits for a reason. And you might not know about them, but if you tell me, if you feel like we have a relationship where you can share the intimate parts of your life, I might have tools to help you. So it's defining that zone of respect and then being open to hear the bad stuff that's happening in their life, the good stuff that's happening in their life, celebrate when they have a baby, celebrate the new wedding, the new car, like the great things about their life. Those pieces are so important to creating a space where people feel like they belong.
Yeah. And that is not just the job of the HR person. The HR person can navigate it, but the hiring managers, the department leaders, they're all able to do those things.
Yes. I have a theory about why they don't, if you want to hear it. I think we ask too much of them. We ask them to be doers and managers. The leader. I think we ask too much of them to be the doer and the leader. And we don't give them the time or the resources to truly be the leader that they need to be to create the environment that we want for our people. There are some great people that can balance that, but there are so many others who just struggle and are just hanging by a thread to make that happen.
Yeah, I think they're eager for the education for sure. They want to be better leaders, but you and I know a lot of times the practice of HR will become, we'll just go to HR. HR says don't do it. HR just says don't do it. And then at some point you get told enough times and the conditioning becomes, well, what can I do?
Right. And I'm totally okay with, HR being the backstop when a manager is having a bad day and can't handle that. I'm totally okay with that. I don't say I delight in somebody having a bad day, but I delight in giving the opportunity to help them through a bad day. I really do. I want to help. So I'm happy to be that backstop to a manager, but you're absolutely right. A manager has to be able to do those and giving them the skills necessary to be empathetic, to be an active listener, to being able to prioritize things. So when someone is having a bad day, say, let me take this off your plate. Or, our AAPI community, if there are huge amount of hate crimes, if they're just struggling to be able to change those priorities for them or helping them in ways that you wouldn't normally think of. So all of those things a manager needs to understand, and HR is the backstop for it.
Yeah. Would you say HR is, do you feel they're doing their part, or organizations, I won't just say HR, but organizations, are they doing their audits? Should they be doing their audits about what it's costing them to not invest in their leadership development? Even the clients I work with, majority of them have not done a cost of hire analysis, a simple cost of hire analysis of what their attrition is costing them. I mean, that's stuff I've been doing for 10 years. And it's just amazing that I was just, on the average, what's the average of $8,000 national average to hire someone on the hour, just on the basic average. And have you done a return on investment if after, 6 months to a year, someone leaves, all that we have on these resignations, but they've not done that cost of analysis to then go out and see, well, if you could invest in the leadership development, you could reduce your turnover by this much, and then you could put that money back into more development. And you wouldn't see all this high turnover. You wouldn't see this panic to get 400 assembly workers in after you've just landed a big deal for, one of the big GM or Ford or manufacturers. It's like they refuse to see those numbers. Now, and I worry sometimes if HR is doing their part to start doing those audits now, or they should have been done 5 years ago.
Well, so I'll push back a little bit on you. I don't think you need to know the cost to do this kind of investment. And if the cost is what is swaying
leaders.
I'm getting there. If leaders are saying, I want to know the cost of this in order to make the investment, I think you've got a bad leader. I think
Yeah.
if we step back to whenever Richard Branson said the best investment you can make in is your people, because that's how they treat, good people treat your customers well, or how they treat you, they'll treat your customers that way. I mean, that was what, the 90s? I don't know when the date of that quote is, but we've known for a long time, the more and the better you invest in your people, the better they will take care of your business. And so if you have to get down to the brass tacks that it's $8,000 to cost to hire, and we lose them in 6 to 9 months, and so it's going to cost, that much money over time, it just exponentially. So maybe we should do some retention programs or change how we do benefits or all of those things. That shouldn't be the motivator. It shouldn't be the motivator for DEIB stuff. It shouldn't be the motivator for how that we should invest in our people. What the motivator should be is, we've got a bunch of humans here. Humans are messy. Let's try do our best to take care of them so that we can be a better organization and we can be better people. We can be a better member of our community. Like even if it's something as important, but seems, trivial in the grander scheme of things. And I don't mean to say vaccines are trivial. I think they're really, really important, but it's like this one moment in time. To get to 70%, to get to 80% herd immunity, employers are going to have to step up and incentivize those people to go get it. It's not that it's just being a good community, good member or harbinger of that community to say, hey, as an employer, we're going to require this for our people, unless they need a accommodation for religion or disability. But I think that is so important. Is it the right thing should be the motivator, not just the cost of dollars. And I get lost in that and get frustrated in the business case for diversity. Screw your business case.
I know. And I get, that's the biggest frustration that I have as well. Cause then it turns into a checkbox item. It's like, well, you're not weaving this into your culture. But the one argument that it is a frustrating one that always comes back is like, show me the numbers. And I can't help but feel the denominator always goes back to, have you done a cost analysis on your hiring and your terminations? Like, have you done all those cost analysis? And typically it's like, no. We'll start with those numbers. And then maybe, even though your leader is definitely not seeing the picture through the view of some privileges that they live with or are surrounded by, but somehow the numbers seem to be the thing that break them. But then you're right, it becomes the balancing act of also weaving it into the culture so that it doesn't. But here in the Midwest, that is the one thing that has definitely come back from clients. Where are the numbers? Where are the numbers? Where are the numbers? Where are the numbers? And I'm like, oh my gosh. Okay. All right. Here are the numbers. So,
unfortunate.
I know.
So unfortunate.
So I kind of want to, I don't even know how long we've been on here now. Oh my gosh, it's been a little over an hour. I want to get a little bit over to, if it's okay, policy. So policy is changing, not changing. There's a lot of different directions right now on policies. And especially with the return back to work, there are vaccines, some employers like, do we require vaccines? Do we not require vaccines? And then we have, our employees of color that, based on history, it's like, I'm not sure I want to get a vaccine. We have LGBT friends of mine, like, I'm not really sure I want to get a vaccine because of this and like all these things, that there's a fear there of getting it. So how are you helping people consult and navigate through come back to work safely and inclusively?
So I don't like drafting policies for one-off situations in general. Like, if I can identify who made it so I had to write this policy, it shouldn't be a policy. So gotcha. Like even what's an indiscipline, like we shouldn't have gambling. Well, who was gambling? Oh, it was Jimmy. Okay, well then we don't need a policy for that. Jimmy just should have been disciplined. Like, we don't need a policy to address that. You're creating a bigger problem than just dealing with Jimmy normally. It's like those right? Like
shitty dress code policies.
Yes, exactly. Like, again, you work with adults.
Right. Dress appropriately, period.
Right. I mean, I don't even think if my 16-year-old would know what to wear to work if you made him. So I think it's just a little, I think we've, HR has gotten into the knee-jerk response that we need a policy for that. And I blame lawyers. I blame lawyers for creating that situation, that we need a policy for that. Because if we have a policy, then we'll be consistent. We can be consistent without a policy. When it talks about returning to the office, my philosophy on returning to the office is that we need to return to the office for what reason? Why do we need to be back in the office? How are we communicating we need to be back in the office? And what is the opinion of employees about being back in the office? Because that is just as important, and if not more important than the other reasons we might want to have for people being back in the office. Because if we like genuinely hear why people don't want to be back in the office, we genuinely listen to them, we're going to be more likely to retain them, period. So my clients are looking at returning to the office as, we want you back in the office because we believe it's easier to collaborate when I can just stop by your cube. Yeah. But we're not going to force you to be back in the office 100% of the time, because we also recognize and value the ability for you to be flexible. So for some of my clients, we're going to have these core hours of 10 to 3. We don't care when you come into the office other times, but meeting times will be somewhere between 10 and 3, Mondays and Wednesdays. So to the extent you can be there Mondays and Wednesdays between 10 and 3, great. Yeah. Okay. And we're going to trust that you're able to get your work done in other ways, because we've seen you be able to get the work done over the past 15 months. So that's what we're going to do. When it comes to vaccines, as I mentioned, this is really are we being a good member of a community if we don't incentivize getting the vaccine, if we don't encourage our people? And in fact, OSHA will say you have to encourage your people to get vaccinated. You have to talk about the benefits of the vaccine, and that's part of their guidance. So
can I pause you for just a second? Because I want you to finish this, but what are some incentives?
Incentives.
What are some incentives an employer can provide for their employee to get a shot?
So there's a couple of different ones. I've got my clients in the cash realm are somewhere between $50 and $150. If you show a fully vaxxed card and you're fully vaxxed, we'll give you $150 cash. We'll tax it the right way. Okay. But $150 we'll get that.
So they're paying their people to get their vaccine.
Yep. Others have said you can take your mask off as soon as you're fully vaxxed. Otherwise, you have to wear the mask. Now that puts HR in a particularly difficult position of being mask police, but that has been very persuasive for some people. Like, I don't want to wear this mask anymore. I truly don't know how people wear masks every day, all day long. Like I can't. I'm so thankful that I've been able to be in my house and not wear a mask. But that would be another incentive. Another incentive is, swag. A lot of other incentives I've seen are, you get into a pool for a trip, those kinds of things have been some of the incentives. Money is by far the most prevalent incentive that people have been using.
Ooh, those are interesting. Those are unique because it's all new to everybody. So they are unique. Yeah. So go back policy. One-off policy, what you're saying before we got on the incentives.
Yeah. So I don't, when somebody sends me a handbook, like for example, I have a new client who's going to be sending me a handbook that's 67 pages long. That is 32 pages too long. Like it just like, no one's reading that. Nobody is reading. No one's reading that. You make them sign something that says that they've read it, but no one's read that. Yeah. And so I look at policy as there's two different parts for human resources. There's the procedure and there's the policy. And the policy sets the expectations for both the employee and the employer. What can I expect my employer to do if I'm pregnant? What can I expect my employer to do when I work overtime? Like those are the policies that need to be there so they set expectations. Because often an employee will go to the handbook first before they ever come talk to me, particularly around pregnancy. Like I find out I'm pregnant, I'm going to go find out, am I going to get it paid leave? Am I not going to get paid leave? And I might do that at week 8. I might not do, I might tell my employer until week 14 of my pregnancy that I'm actually pregnant. So, just, I want to know that information up front. And same thing is for for harassment. I want to know what is harassment. I want to know that stuff early on. I might not ever go report anything unless I've looked at the handbook first. Right. So the handbook has to be that expectation setter. Whether or not I look at I-9s, it doesn't belong in my handbook. That belongs in my procedures for HR. Right. What is the procedure for handling some of these things? And so some of my clients have 2 different books. They have a handbook, they have an HR procedure guide. Like they split them up because it's just not important to employees to know that those procedures exist. It might be for like ISO certification that's why it's over here in the procedure guide, but it doesn't need to be in the handbook really. Right. So we're looking at handbooks as something that's easy to read, it's easy to understand. And for those 2 things, the best advice I ever received about writing is to write to a 4th grade level. Not that your employees are 4th graders, but everyone will understand if I read it, and a 4th grader can understand that. So there's no legalese in my handbooks. I try to take it all out because I want it to be so simple and so clear. So, it's no more than 35 pages. It's easy to understand. It doesn't do more than it has to. And it just basically sets those expectations.
Gotcha. And so everyone coming back, because you see there's going to be an influx of HR going to make some sort of post-COVID policy.
Yeah,
they're going to make one post-COVID policy. And so they're returning back to work and everything. How are you helping kind of help individuals, your organizations navigate, again, that safely and inclusively?
Well, we do it by, setting the expectations of what do we really need you here for? What do you want to be here for? And setting those, like asking those questions. And in some cases, it's going to be like a checklist. Like, do you have all of this stuff at home that you need to work effectively? And the reason I say checklist is because some members of some groups fear asking for an additional monitor. They fear for asking for a printer. And so if we just give them the option right out of the gate, then we don't put them in that place to make them ask us for that stuff. So we've done checklists for some of that stuff. We've done, like literally calling them on the phone and asking, what do you want to do, instead of doing, blind surveys. The surveys are okay for some things, but it doesn't ever replace the ability to just call someone and talk to them.
It does not take that long to set up some sort of leader phone bank. I've done it a couple of times. My leaders are like, let's engage our employees. Call them. We've got 3 days here, like 2 to 3 days. Make it a thing. Yeah. Ridiculous.
Make it a thing.
Yeah. Make it a thing.
Yeah. So I like those kinds of things are the ways we've tried to make it as inclusive as possible, like making sure that we hear people, giving them options, making it so that there are less barriers to requesting things like those checklists I mentioned. But then also setting the quote unquote policy is this is a one-time off thing. This is not something that belongs in your handbook. This is not something where we're going to say, if you're performing poorly, you have to be back in the office. No, that doesn't make any sense. It's a management issue, not a be in the workplace issue. So we've had those kinds of conversations about how do we make this both best for the person and best for the organization, because we've learned a lot in the last 15 months and we're going to keep learning all of that and to seize upon it. I don't think we will ever have a case again in a court system that says working from home is not a reasonable accommodation, unless it's like manufacturing or retail, like that, or hospitals. It just doesn't work that way. Right. So, we've got those cases now that I think now are just meaningless. So
it's going to be interesting to know what the data shows this time next year. I've been curious to know with everyone returning the whole no masks, yes masks. Even had one organization, I think, toward the end of last year, they where it was the possible lifting and people be able to return back to work, they were going to do different colored bracelets for people who got their vaccination, people who didn't, and people who were thinking about it. Like, that's how HR was going to identify it. And so I am going to be curious to know, for those organizations that are like, oh, incentivize, but you can't wear a mask, like what the options, how they're doing it. And then those individuals who wear masks in certain organizations, are they going to be segregated out as, the softies? And are the people who don't wear masks going to be labeled as those individuals who don't give a shit? Like, what is that going to cause? And I'm going to be interested to know what comes out of how this is now a new identity. Because a new identity now is, do you wear a mask or not a mask?
True.
And
I think though it gets back to that line of what is respect, what is respect and not. And I think you're gonna see more policing, quote unquote, around. That's not respectful to tease the person who's wearing a mask. They're wearing a mask because they have legitimate fears. If you don't make fun of them, or don't waive the fact, well, you're too scared to get a vaccine. Like, no, we don't tease people about those kinds of things. Right. So it's redefining that, not in a policy way, but redefining how we treat each other with respect, as I'm not going to tolerate it from you. This is disrespectful. Don't do that here. So I think fundamentally we keep revising what that ring of respect looks like.
Yeah. And like you said, we're not going to have this. This isn't going to be figured out for a while. This is going to take some time.
Well, I think it's going to take some time, but the mask and vaccine thing, that'll be done by the end of fall. Like, we'll be over that by then. I think we'll have enough experience and enough in our back pocket to know that, okay, we're done with this for the moment. And so if anything, we've learned to be both fast and slow as HR people. Real fast in March of 2020, and now it's not as urgent anymore. So
I'm hoping for that. What are some, give me the top two things that you think a leader really needs to have as they navigate into this new course of people leadership? What are two things that you would give a leader? And then what is one very important policy that you would encourage? If there was one policy that you would encourage an HR or an organization to have, what would that policy be?
Okay, can I start with the last question first?
Yes, you can.
It's easier for me. You have to have a good, easy to understand harassment policy. Just right there. Like, our organization values working in the community that we're in, the diversity of that community, the beauty of that community. We love being here. Harassment is not respectful. Harassment based on these things, and we want to reflect that community. Like, that's how a harassment policy should start, something like that. And then giving good examples, jokes, epithets, unwanted touching, those kinds of things, having a good, robust, and please tell us. And managers, if you could be disciplined if you don't tell us. Like, being very clear about what it is, how you report it, that we want to know, and that you can get in trouble if you don't, if you're a manager. So, like, all of those things are fundamental pieces of that policy.
That's one thing. That's a good one. There's a lot of legal wrapped up in that one.
There is a lot of legal, but it doesn't have to sound that way. It doesn't have to sound that way. So I personally love my policy, but I think there are ways to do it that doesn't sound like a lawyer wrote it, that makes it so, oh, of course, that's what it is. Of course.
Right. No, I'll not be a jerk. Sure.
Yeah. Don't be a dick. That can be your harassment policy. It's like, there you go.
Dress appropriately. Don't be an asshole.
Don't be a dick. Yeah. We're done. Piece of cake, can of corn. But the two things that I think managers or that leaders really need to know is, one, that caring about your people is so important to building relationships where they want to come tell you about when there are problems. Because caring about your people is so important. And then embracing the complaint. Those are the two things that are critical. Because if you have a good relationship with your staff, and if they feel comfortable coming to tell you when they have a concern, you have an opportunity to fix things when they're little things. When they get to be big things, you've got a significantly bigger problem. Like when Steve, not physically rubs me the wrong way, but he's creepy. Like, have you noticed that Steve's just a little creepy? Like, if I knew that, I could have a conversation with Steve so that when Steve wants to hug somebody, it's not automatically harassment. Like, I wish I had that opportunity. And if I'm a good people leader, I care about my people to where they trust me. They know that they can trust me. Then that they want to hear my complaints, then I'm likely not going to have big issues in my team. So I embrace the complaint.
I love that.
There must be
that care for your people and embrace the complaint, the concern. Embrace it.
Yeah.
You're a leader. Embrace the fact that you're going to deal with these things. Get the hell over it.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a great Harvard Business Review article about how organizations where employees complain more, they're better places to work. Just flat out. Like, if you tell me the uncomfortable truths, I can deal with them. If you just keep me you just keep me comfortable, there are much bigger issues going on. So embrace the complaint.
Embrace the complaint. I love that. How do people get connected to you? Tell us. I always say this to the end because I want people to hold on. I don't want them to get all the information and just lose that. Where they can find you, your organization, how you're a badass. How do they get connected to you?
So you can my favorite home at the moment is Twitter. I love Twitter. So I'm K8BISCH on Twitter. Kate Bischoff on LinkedIn. You can find me on my firm's website, which is thrivelawconsulting.com, which I haven't updated a lot recently. So don't hold that against me. I have a podcast called the Hostile Work Environment Podcast, where Mark Oliphant's one of my friends who we've never met in real life, but we talk about what is out there in the news and how that impacts employment law and how that impacts HR people. So you can hear me there.
So you're getting some forecasting out there.
Well, yeah, when Amy Cooper sues her employer for race discrimination and gender discrimination because she's the white lady who engaged in racist behavior in the Central Park, that impacts employment law. So Mark and I talk about that. So yeah, it does.
That's wonderful. What's it called again?
Yeah. The Hostile Work Environment Podcast.
The Hostile Work Environment. Okay.
Yes. So we have that. And, I'm ERE's legal columnist. So if you subscribe to ERE, you're going to see my stuff. I talk about mandatory vaccines for new employees. I think that article will come out soon. So I'm not hard to find. I'm kind of everywhere, I feel. Yeah. Overly exposed.
Yeah. So, and then the website is
thrivelawconsulting.com.
Thrivelawconsulting.com. Okay. And that's how I want to make sure they get connected to you, because you're a badass HR. You think outside the box, and you're a very knowledgeable and passionate attorney about this. And thank you for being honestly one of the coolest advocates and allies that I've encountered here in my tenure career of HR. Thank you so much. You're a badass motherfucker.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. This is fun.
Yeah. Anyway, take care. Thank you so much, Kate.
Thanks.